Hi everybody, my name's Christy. This is my older adult oral video presentation. I'm going to apologize in advance if there are cats that streak through or a whining and barking puppy in the background, but this is like the 15th time that I've tried recording it, so we're just gonna go with this one and hope for the best. So this video will focus on Ericksonian developmental theory, specifically stage 8, which is ego integrity versus ego despair. Erikson suggested that in his 8th and final developmental stage, it's one in which an individual reflects upon their existence and whether they've achieved success in their endeavors or if they feel unfulfilled or regretful. So, ego integrity versus ego despair. With regards to the woman that I interviewed, Carol, which is obviously not her real name, that was changed for confidentiality and privacy. She lost her beloved husband in a very tragic motorcycle accident. She also received a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer that has metastasized to multiple organs. She retired from work shortly before her husband's passing, and he had also. They both retired right around the same time with lots of plans for the future. And also, the global pandemic has caused significant isolation. So, some challenges that Carol has experienced, other than the ones mentioned prior. Carol and her husband had been together since she was 15 years old, and she said he was the only man she ever trusted and that she felt safe with him. She and her husband had planned on traveling the country together in their retirement. Carol's husband was very social, and he was the one to initiate activities and organize plans. And while she said she very much enjoyed the social aspect of everything, she was a little bit of a wallflower when it came to reaching out to people and making plans and getting everybody together. Carol's cancer is terminal, and the chemotherapy that she's receiving is palliative and not curative. Carol identifies that she has experienced a great deal of trauma since childhood. And while she states that she has moments of fear and some regret regarding certain circumstances, she does recognize that she has always had a fighting spirit and she has never given up. Carol had to quit high school in her teens to work and to provide money for her family to survive. Her father was in and out of the picture, and she was the oldest of 6 children and was very parentified, was the one to take care of her siblings constantly. Her mother, as well as her father, had a significant alcohol problem. That being said, one of Carol's biggest accomplishments is that she was able to get her GED and even went on to attend college. In the face of uncertainty, though success and failure occasionally have felt like a jump rope, Carol states that when she reflects on her life, she has a sense of pride for overcoming everything that she has without being left feeling jaded. Carol's great-granddaughter was diagnosed with cancer as a preschooler. Carol describes wanting to bypass treatment following her own diagnosis, and her great-granddaughter, who is now in grade school and is in remission, sat next to her after being told of her Mamie's diagnosis and told her that she would hold her hand if she felt sick after treatment, and that she thought that her Mamie would still look beautiful even if all her hair fell out. Carol describes that moment as the kick in the pity pants that she needed. Carol also describes a very positive relationship with her oncologist, with her entire oncology team. She feels as though they listen to her, they respect her opinions, and they are very forthright but kind with her during the very difficult conversations that they've had to have. Carol's youngest daughter moved in with her to assist with the house after Carol lost her husband. So, as well as being an emotionally difficult time, the financial and the social burden were incredibly difficult as well. Carol's daughter moving in, though sometimes it's difficult, they both expressed, and primarily because they're both still grieving Carol's husband and her daughter's father. Carol can admit that this was definitely a mutually beneficial decision. Carol's father was physically and emotionally abusive to her on a very consistent basis. Carol recalled a time that she had to hold him up against a wall with a broomstick across his throat because he was drunk and trying to strangle her. Carol's husband had created a sense of safety and unconditional trust for her. His passing awakened feelings of both fear and danger, as well as a lack of connectedness in Carol. Carol witnessed multi-generational abuse in her family from the time she was a very young child. These patterns of abuse created a pattern of disruptive attachment in she and her family members. Two of Carol's daughters, as well as her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, have created a schedule of taking Carol to all of her oncology and her treatment appointments. The family has been supporting Carol by taking her to rides down by the ocean or wherever she'd like to go. She says recently she's like to go back to where she was raised and just reminisce about the times that were good. She said as much as there were some bad times that happened back there, she can really resonate with the good that happened and the good that even followed that. So as much as they're taking her for rides, they're also just spending time with her, watching old movies and doing the things that she just truly likes to do. Family, friends, and community members surprised Carol by decorating the outside of her home, her barn, and all of the outbuildings with Christmas lights this year to provide cheer and love. The cancer center that Carol is a patient at provides levels of support through groups and individual therapy. The center also offers Reiki and other complementary treatments, including pet therapy, which Carol says she absolutely loves. So moving on to Gilligan's theory of moral development. Gilligan's theory of moral development focuses on gender difference psychology. Gilligan believed that the methods developed by previous theorists such as Freud, Erikson, Piaget, and most notably her mentor, Kohlberg, unjustly characterized women as inferior to men. Gilligan believed that the developmental stages by the prior theorists measured favorable outcomes based upon traits, characteristics and thought processes typical in males, but they did not take into account the developmental norms of women, who tend to be less moral justice oriented and more focused on connectivity, inclusivity, and integrity. Gilligan further suggests that at their highest level of moral development, women tend to focus on global consequences involved in gaining control of their own lives while being intentionally mindful of the impact their decisions have on others. Gilligan's theory of moral development continued. Carol displayed reaching a level of attaining the ability to transition her thoughts, actions, and behaviors from being based upon the need to care for herself in an environment of abuse and turmoil, which took place at the hands of her father and her mother. They moved many, many, many times when Carol was growing up, once due to a home fire, other times being thrown out by family members for arguments in the family. Just a lot going on. So she went from that to unconsciously sacrificing her own needs and morphing into a character of everyone's caretaker. So she did that as a wife, as a mother. She also took care of her in-laws, her younger siblings as they turned into adults. She just turned into the caretaker for everyone. And then she's ended up at a place of having a strong sense of integrity in weighing out her decisions based upon her own value system and how decisions will impact those around her, as well as how it will impact her. So, theory limitations as far as Gilligan's theory, and it pertains with Carol. Limitations of Gilligan's theory pertaining to Carol's life experience consist mainly of the overly broad brush approach with which Gilligan illustrates her theory. In Carol's life experiences, she transformed her way into a position of cognitively choosing to make mutually beneficial, caring decisions. The oppression that Carol faced was not a construct within Gilligan's theory. Gilligan's theory suggests that Carol's occasional choices would have rendered her as morally deficient, rather than struggling through oppressive realities not fully examined within Gilligan's theory. So I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. I have listed the references for the aforementioned information, but I think even more important than these references, the references from Carol herself, who provided the information. She's just an amazing woman who, in her own words, finally feels comfortable in her own skin. And while she wishes she was not a widow and doesn't have or wouldn't have cancer, she is comfortable in her own skin, and she's made peace with everything from her past. And it was just nice to be able to interview her and to hear that perspective from her. So again, thank you.